In France, current President Emmanuel Macron obtained the re-election with the 58.5% of votes. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, denounced that the government of Colombia is advancing plans to generate violence in the country. The Democratic Republic of the Congo declared an outbreak of Ebola virus after another confirmed case was reported. Hi, you're watching from the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the teleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In France, current President Emmanuel Macron obtained the re-election. According to the Ministry of the Interior, Emmanuel Macron won the elections with 58.5% of votes, while his opponent Marine Le Pen obtained 41.5%. Far-right candidate Le Pen admitted her defeat. Despite his victory, Macron must wait for the legislative elections, which will be crucial to implement his government's policies. He will face major challenges such as the economic and social situation within the country and his position regarding the conflict in Ukraine, also the sanctions imposed by the United States and its European allies on Russia. Macron is the fourth French president to win re-elections after Charles de Gaulle, François Mitterrand, and Jacques Chirac. The turnout in this second round was 26.4%, according to the Interior Ministry, slightly higher than at the same time for the first round 2 weeks ago. However, the abstention rate in the French presidential election was 28%, the highest in the last 20 years. From Ukraine, there are reports of mass graves found near the city of Mariupol. Our correspondent Alejandro Kirk interviews Eva Bartlett, analyst based in Moscow, a witness to the events that actually took place there.
Yes, greetings from Donetsk in the People's Republic of Donetsk. Yesterday there were reports of mass grave of about 9,000 people near Mariupol. It turns out that it wasn't quite true. So we are going to speak now with Eva Bartlett, an analyst based in Moscow who was there yesterday to tell us what really happened at that supposedly mass grave that was discovered in the region. Eva, thanks for being with us. What happened? You were at the cemetery.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It really makes me angry when I see just such blatant war propaganda. So basically, all of Western media is repeating the same lies, almost word for word, verbatim, based on the former mayor of Mariupol, who's now nowhere near the city. And they're saying that there's a town to the west of Mariupol, about 12 miles to the west, and they're saying there's a mass grave there that Russians have been trying to hide their war crimes by burying people in a pit. And they described it as a pit with like 30-meter wide trenches, and they're saying, the mayor is saying that Russia's trying to hide its barbaric crimes, this is a quote from him, by throwing bodies in the pit. And so, you know, this evokes all sorts of emotion amongst, you know, viewers and readers. But in fact, I went there with a fellow journalist yesterday, and what we found was a cemetery that was already there, and then new graves, and we tallied them up, and they were somewhere between 200 and 300 if you want to be generous, some of which, by the way, were empty. They were graves awaiting newly deceased people, but they were all very orderly. Some of them had crosses, some of them had the names of the deceased and the birth dates, others didn't, and they simply had numbers according to when they were buried. And then by chance, well, we were both just talking and saying, you know, this does not strike me as the scene of a mass grave. But as we were talking, two grave diggers appeared, and we chatted with them, and we explained what the West has been saying. They said absolutely not. They said they have personally buried everyone in the graveyard. Every person has their own single grave and are buried in a coffin, and they both emphasized that they try to treat the bodies with dignity and bury them as humanely as possible. And interestingly enough, there's even a spot in this region for Ukrainian soldiers. So they made the point that, you know, even though these are Ukrainian soldiers that were fighting against us, they deserve to be buried.
And there was we saw, you and I have been together to Mariupol like a month ago, and in our the trips that we did after that, we found that there were many bodies that were buried by the families elsewhere. So maybe it's just those bodies that they are finding, what they are bringing to this cemetery, and trying to identify them and organize this mess that was created after the combats.
You know, I actually was wondering that myself. I was making the point, like, we have no way of knowing how or when these people died. The ones that did have a date of birth written on the grave marker, most of the people were elderly, born in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 1930s, 40s, 50s. So, you know, they could have died from any number of causes, but there's no indication of what they died of or when or by whom. But I also made the point, you know, Mariupol was ruled by Ukrainian forces, among them Azov and other Nazi battalions, and we know from now the many testimonies that have come out of Mariupol after it was liberated that these Nazis ruled in a very brutal way, including point-blank execution. So, you know, I would not be surprised if among the dead are people that were executed by Nazis, but we have no way of knowing.
Life seems to be normalizing in Mariupol and other places. This is in your assessment, is it that happening? You know, many of these things that we hear, like this, mass graves, are published as truth without any second confirmation or new sources by the Western media. And now that's a truth that there is in Western media. 9,000 bodies were buried in a mass grave in Mariupol. So how do you see this ethics in journalism that is happening now?
A lack thereof, a lack of ethics for sure. Well, you made a good point. In most media reporting on this, they will say, in small print, maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs down, we cannot independently verify this. But you know, it's by then it's too late, because the headlines are screaming about mass graves and Russian war crimes, right? Then the average reader maybe doesn't even make it to the 4th paragraph. They do, it's going to be lost on them. So the whole point is that the media know that they are deceiving. Even if they were to come to the very site that I went to yesterday, they would still lie. They would still deceive. We saw this in Volnovakha. There were French media that went there, and they did not tell the true story about why a hospital was damaged there. They actually admitted the story, even though we all heard the same thing. So in my opinion, based on years of dealing with this Western media war propaganda over Syria, it is deliberate, it is shameless, it is unscrupulous, and it is without ethics.
And to finish, the journalism seems to be the main victim of this military operation and war that is happening, because now we have like 2 blocks. In Vietnam, journalists were able to independently cover stories, go to people. Now that's absolutely impossible. We see the Western media aligned with an official version and censoring others. So in that, you know, for the future of journalism, world journalism, Western journalism, how do you see it?
It's increasingly difficult, to say the least. I mean, journalists like yourself and myself and our colleagues are being deplatformed from social media, or we're having labels slapped on us. For example, this person is a Russian whatever. And you know, yeah, and I've been smeared relentlessly for years, and the nature of the smear is a character assassination. It's never the content of what I'm writing or saying. It's purely character assassination. So I think with a combination of the censorship and the character assassinations makes it very difficult for us, but it does have a reverse effect as well. People who see, well, wait a second, I thought she was just a conspiracy theorist, but it turned out this person was right about particular issues that happened in the past. Maybe I'm going to stop believing the smear. So sometimes the reverse effect is that it brings new followers, new supporters, but it certainly is, they do have the might of the global media, of all the propaganda outlets working in hand together. So it certainly is an uphill battle for people like us.
Thanks, Eva. That's it for now from Donetsk, People's Republic of Donetsk.
The Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, denounced on Sunday that the United States authorities blocked the work of the Russian diplomatic mission in Washington. The Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, informed on Sunday that the work of the Russian diplomatic mission in the United States is blocked. Anatoly Antonov also stated that the accounts of the Russian general consulates in Houston and New York were closed by the Bank of America. The ambassador also declared that the Russian diplomatic mission receives threats both by telephone and in writing, and pointed out that even for a period of time he was prevented from leaving the embassy due to the fear of the Russian phobia by the citizens of the North American country. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi and welcome back to From the South. President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, announced that the government of Colombia is advancing plans to generate violence in the country. In his speech at the second plenary session at the 5th Congress of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela on Saturday, President Nicolas Maduro stated that the national intelligence services are gathering information and investigating the destabilizing plans organized against the nation from Bogotá. Among the plans denounced by President Maduro, he highlighted the attack against the national electrical system, the fresh water service, and the selective assassination of members of state security forces. He also warned that groups of the far right are trying to stop the process of recovery and economic growth of the country. Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt arrived in Cuba on Sunday for an official visit that will last until April 27th. Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on its website that during his stay, Mr. Skerritt, who is also Minister of Finance, Resilience, Economic Affairs, Investment, Planning, Sustainable Development, Telecommunications, and Broadcasting of that country, will hold talks with Cuban authorities and carry out other activities. Cuba and Dominica will celebrate next May 18th 26 years of uninterrupted official relations. However, relations existed since 1979 when a free scholarship program was instituted, thanks to which more than 400 young people graduated in universities and middle-level careers in different fields. In Panama, electricity generation from renewable sources is growing fast. According to a statement from the National Energy Department, renewable energy generation during the first quarter of the year was at 553.89 megawatts per hour, which represents an increase of 51% over the same period of 2019, whose maximum was 282.75. Likewise, the introduction of renewable energies in the country's electrical system increased by 69% between 2019 and 2021. Also, the Spanish Energy Agency recorded a double in photovoltaic parks from about 200 megawatts to about 400 megawatts over the past year alone in the country. Panama's goal is to reduce carbon emissions by 11.5% by 2030 and at least by 24% by 2050. With various activities, the Uruguayan Communist Party commemorated the anniversary of the massacre of Section 20. The main figures of Frente Amplio and other social organizations of the country participated in the act. On April 17, 1972, repressive forces of the Uruguayan state assassinated 8 communist workers who were in Section 20 of that political grouping. In that operation, the police agents began shooting against the establishment, and later the order was given to those inside to leave. When they went out to the streets with their hands up, José Abreu, Héctor Fernández, Raúl Gancio, Ricardo González, Rubén López, Luis Mendiola, and Justo Sena were murdered. Although the state never recognized the massacre, different investigations confirmed that it was an official operation that sought to assassinate the workers. The Mapuche people seek agreements to settle what they call a historical debt owed to them by the state of Chile. Representatives of Mapuche communities in the southern city of Temuco in search of agreements to settle, despite their differences, the historical debt they consider the Chilean state owes them. First inhabitants of Chile and Argentina, the Mapuche people, or people of the earth, claimed that after the multiple political processes following the arrival of the Spaniards, they were reduced to living on about 5% of the former lands, today mostly in the hands of forestry companies. Francisca Wirilef, the national advisor of the National Corporation for Indigenous Development, said they can move forward but with willpower in response to the proposal for dialogue launched by President Gabriel Boric, in contrast with the militarization of the region ordered by his predecessor. In Ecuador, a boat carrying 2,000 gallons of diesel sank on Saturday in the Galapagos Islands, and a contingency plan was activated in case of a possible environmental emergency. The privately owned diving boat Albatross was wrecked near Santa Cruz Island, Puerto Ayora. The Ecuadorian Ministry of the Environment said there is a superficial fuel slick in several points of the bay. It also indicated that immediate actions were taken to reduce the impact of the incident on the marine ecosystems near the Galapagos Islands, declared a natural heritage of humanity. We have more news coming up after one final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. The Democratic Republic of the Congo declared an outbreak of Ebola virus after another confirmed case was reported in Bandaka, a city in the northwestern Equateur province. The patient, a 31-year-old man, began indicating symptoms on April 5th. 2 weeks later, patient 0 was admitted to an Ebola treatment center for intensive care, but he died later on that day. Investigations to determine the source of the outbreak are ongoing. This is the 6th outbreak since 2018. Previous outbreaks in Equateur province date from that year and in 2020 with 54 and 130 recorded cases respectively. The Lebanese military recovered the bodies of 5 migrants whose boat carrying nearly 60 people capsized the night before in the Mediterranean, raising the death toll to 6, state media reported. The national news agency said the 5 bodies were found near a small island off the coast of the northern city of Tripoli. Several survivors told local TV stations that the Lebanese Navy is to blame for the incident. They said a military ship rammed their migrant boat twice, damaging it in an effort to force it to return to the coast. Meanwhile, the commander of the Lebanese Navy said the migrant boat was old and only capable of carrying 6 people. He added that no precautionary measures were taken on the boat and no one was wearing life vests. Search operations are still ongoing for the missing people.
The captain of the boat decided to make maneuvers to escape from the Coast Guard and the other boats in a way that led to a collision between the large boat of the Coast Guard and the small boat. The victims were those who survived were 45, and yesterday there was one body of a child. And today we have 5 confirmed bodies until now. God willing, there will not be more victims. There might be some missing. We are looking for them. Hopefully someone will tell us who they are.
Israel closed the Erez crossing for Palestinian workers at the border with the Gaza Strip following the reports by the Israeli Defense Forces about 3 rockets fired from Gaza. Israel's decision has been denounced as a collective punishment towards the impoverished territory's 2 million residents who have lived under an Israeli-Egyptian blockade for nearly 15 years. The move announced on Saturday comes after the Israeli army accused Hamas, the armed group that rules the Gaza Strip, of firing 3 rockets into Israel late on Friday, as tensions continue to amount during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The head of Gaza's workers' union says Palestinians and their economy will be greatly affected by these measures. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I am Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.